Hello, everyone. It's great to be participating in Creative Operations Europe today. So I'll be speaking for the next few minutes about the spread of automation across the marketing function, but an incomplete spread, as it hasn't really hit the creative part of marketing yet. And that incompleteness has had some real pernicious effects on marketing today. But fortunately, a solution is in sight. So I am Andrew Hally. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Bynder. We're a digital asset management provider known for innovation and ease of use. And I've been a marketer for over 2 decades. A lot of that time I've been actually in the MarTech marketing technology solutions for marketers. So I've been fortunate enough to have had a real front row seat at this drama. So let's set the stage by looking back before the world of digital media really happened. And it was really characterized by simplicity of channels, if you will. Think a couple of channels on the television, the local newspaper, perhaps some magazines out of home, a small number of channels, and without a lot of complexity in their execution. And this meant that it was really the heyday of the big idea, a la Don Draper. And the focus was really on the idea in marketing and not nearly so much emphasis on the production elements. The problem, however, was that this marketing was really difficult to measure. Everyone is pretty familiar with this famous quote from the 1870s. We couldn't really measure what was effective, nor was it very targetable, unless you consider targeting to be reaching an entire city through a local newspaper. So then comes the internet and digital media, which is very measurable. It is very targetable. We can use digital media to reach that proverbial right customer at the right time with the right message. And you can see here in this graph that once marketers really got their heads around that and how to use it in the mid 2000s, the presence of digital media was really meteoric. This graph here shows the combined advertising spend for the largest 200 brands in the US and what channels it went to. And you can really see in the mid 2000s how once the measurability and the targeting of digital got our head around it, it really took off. And you can see it just really took share from newspaper, magazine, radio, and even eventually TV. So as digital marketers learned how to target the volume of campaigns, the volume of cells in the campaigns, the granularity of the marketing really exploded across video, display ads, search, mobile. You can really see this growth in volume. At the same time, digital media really accelerated the pace of marketing. So here's just 3 examples of particular channels. Think back to direct mail, where execution really takes place in weeks, maybe down to days. Contrast that with one of the first digital channels, email, where execution takes days down into hours, typically. And then finally, think of the modern online ad network, where execution happens quite literally in the blink of an eye. Too fast, really, for people to do on their own. So the result of this growing volume of campaigns, growing acceleration of campaigns, marketers turned to automation. The graph you see here is a count of the number of software vendors targeting marketing to help with these problems or these opportunities. And you can see a similarly explosive growth in technology vendors, as you saw on the internet, right? Over 5,000% growth here in just these 9 years. The problem, however, is that this automation was unevenly distributed. It was really focused on downstream, on execution, on performance marketing, and only an infinitesimal amount was really focused upstream into the creative processes that feed all these downstream execution. So this graphic here is a map of those 8,000 vendors that we have in 2020. And only that little island off on the left, only a little part of that island on the left are vendors involved with the creative process. So while this whole rest of the world shows how campaign and marketing execution has become highly automated, the critical creative process that feeds these campaigns has remained largely linear and manual and bespoke. That's not to say that there haven't been amazing improvements in the tools that get used. So, the things that, for example, the Adobe Creative Cloud can do today, just it's miracles compared to 10 years ago. We have workflow in products like Dan that really smooth out the process and the approvals involved in creating in the creative process. And we have DAM software that makes the end product at least readily available, easily to find across the rest of the marketing organization. But the essence of the workflow itself has remained largely manual and with talented individuals crafting assets one at a time. And this mismatch between a very manual creative process and a highly automated, algorithmically driven world of marketing execution has created a content crunch that has really thrown marketing out of balance. Let me and this lack of balance is having some real negative impact on marketing today. Let me give you some examples. The first is that the difficulty in producing assets at scale is really limiting marketers' ability to provide consumers with great personalized digital experiences online. It used to be all about the difficulty of getting your data and of algorithms and machine learning capable of figuring out how to personalize. But that's really been solved. And as a result, Gartner has found just this year that about a third of CMOs now think that content is the number one barrier to personalization. So this was important a year ago, but it's critical now, right? After a year of pandemic has really accelerated digital transformation and pushed so much more business to online channels. Digital experience is really the primary battleground competitively. That's why you see companies like McKinsey, which is a well-known strategy consultant who works for CEOs and boards. Even McKinsey now is worrying about this problem of creative content as the brake on better digital experience. So another impact within the creative team itself is that our creatives are spending so much time trying to keep up with this huge demand for digital assets that we've really sucked away their ability, their time to do what they do best, which is come up with great creative concepts, tell stories, build brands. So as a result, many have noticed a kind of gray digital sameness online as brands are forced to rely too much on clip art and stock photography to flesh out their creative. And at the worst point, this mismatch, perhaps the most lasting legacy of this of marketing being out of balance, is what it's doing to our consumers. The mismatch between our ability to execute highly personalized ad campaigns online that are incredibly targeted, it's so outstripped our ability to creatively keep up with that brands are often left doing little more than naked pumping across the internet, no matter where our consumer goes. I bet most of you have a story like this. Mine is the case of the haunting Hawaiian shirt, where in advance of some party years ago that was Hawaiian themed, I made the mistake of searching online for Hawaiian shirts. And ever since then, I've been plagued by internet advertisements about Hawaiian shirts. I'm sure you have studies like this as well. Maybe it's how you are seeing all these ads for things that are unrelated to you, but probably for a child or a parent in the household. This has really begun to breed a lot of consumer resentment. The surprising thing, though, is not so much that consumers are resenting this, that brands, we ourselves know that this is creepy, but we kind of can't help ourselves. So shame on us if we're surprised that this consumer resentment has hardened into law, starting in Europe with the GDPR, and then now in the States with the CCPA. So the incomplete state of automation across the marketing function has led to a content crunch that's really unbalanced marketing, which is having some pretty negative impacts. How do we go about restoring the balance? Well, fortunately, I think we've got a path forward. And It starts by reframing the content crunch. It starts by reframing the nature of this demand for assets created by digital marketing and realizing that we don't need uniquely crafted assets for every bit of demand coming from digital campaign execution. In fact, all that demand is 95% of it is 95% the same. They're very similar. And in fact, once you have kind of a core creative asset, much of the rest of the demand differs in very similar, predictable ways. Let me give you 3 examples. The first is localization. As you well know, any brand doing business in Europe is probably, at minimum needing to translate marketing copy into at least 6 languages. Even here in North America, brands localize and translate. In the US, for example, most big brands want to reach English speakers as well as the substantial Spanish-speaking population we have. In Canada, marketers want to speak reach both the English and the French-speaking populations. So localization is one way that core assets need to get varied. The second example is ad size and format. If you're marketing across the Facebook and Instagram channels, you've got, I believe, 5 different size formats. If you're using Google, they use the 12 different standards supported by the IAB. So 12 different ads formats for each creative that you produce. And then finally, think about testing, right? Any digital marketer will tell you a key to success is making small changes to each creative and then testing them against each other and seeing which one works better, and thereby having a process of just continually finding 0.1% of better performance. So just take these simple examples together. Think of a brand that's doing business across Europe and maybe localizing into 7 languages, translating to 7 languages, that's advertising across Facebook and Google, and maybe doing just simple A/B testing. Each creative asset they created is now generating well over 100 variations. So fortunately, the fact that most of this demand consists of variations that are simple, that are constrained, i.e. just changing one thing at a time, and that are repetitive, meaning these same sorts of changes are being done to all the assets being created. This means that the problem, we can throw software at it. We can use software to help distribute the creative work as well as automate the creative work. Let me give you a couple examples to show you what I mean. So here's how it works to use creative automation tools to distribute asset creation. It starts with the designers actually designing something a little bit different, not so much focused on a core asset, but rather designing templates that can be brought into software, for example, like Bynder, and then these templates are shared downstream. These templates, the brand marketers are allowed to lock down certain aspects according to brand guidelines, so that the color scheme, for example, is always going to be on brand. That images that marketers pull in are always going to be, from a set of approved assets in the digital asset management system. These templates, though, can then be given to the marketing execution teams. So for example, the social media team or marketers in different regions who are then free to make changes within the brand guidelines. For example, to translate copy, to try different colors of call to action buttons for testing purposes, things like that. Optionally, all of these versions can be routed back for an approval cycle if someone wants to ensure that level of extra brand compliance, but by and large, they can stay compliant thanks to the guidelines. And then these teams directly pump the assets into execution. So you can see how the benefit of the creative team has been to share the creation of all this volume. But notice also that the very final creation has been pushed right into the campaign execution teams, which lets them be much more agile. So a social media team working from templates, for example, is able to instantaneously capitalize on whatever thing happens to be trending in their country at this very minute. So you get volume and you get agility. Let me share a case study with you of one Bynder customer, Schroders. They're a multinational asset management firm doing business in 32 countries across the world. In this particular case is about their owned social media, so not social media advertising, their owned social media postings. And the team just wasn't happy with the effectiveness, with the consistency, or really with the creative impact of what they were doing. So they used Bynder's tools, and instead of spending their time on these one-offs, they spent their time really focusing on developing some really great social media card templates, and then turning those over to the social media teams in country to use. And you can see here on the right, just a much more impactful brand execution, right, to the social media cards. So good, in fact, that the social media team won an industry award for best social media marketing. So the end product, you can see, much more effective, much better. At the same time, while what the senior brand manager said about it, doing business in this way, executing this way, gave the creative team more time to be creative. So better output with less time required from the core creative team. So a win-win here. Let me give an example now of, instead of sharing creative production more broadly across the team, of actually fully automating it. And once again, we begin with the creative team designing a template up front here that has certain things that are held constant, where certain elements of it are allowed to change. Instead of sharing this template with other marketers, though, this template is connected to a data source, and that data source is what then generates all these variations, which are then put down into campaign execution. To make this a little more tangible, let me give an example of a Bynder customer, an airline, in fact, doing a dynamic video remarketing use case, the goal of which was to get potential flyers back to the booking engine and actually book a flight that they had researched elsewhere. So the template here, these are for actually 15-second video ads. So the template was a video ad with one variable is footage characteristic of a city that one might have researched. So for example, in London, it would be, Big Ben, the Eye, or something like that. In New York, it would be maybe the Statue of Liberty. So 15-second video over which there was a text card that would have the departure and the destination city, so, New York to London, and then a call to action, which, would typically be book now, but they could experiment with different things. This template then is connected to pricing data. And anyone who's booked an airline ticket, which is probably everybody, although maybe not as recently as we would have liked, pricing data changes every day, right? Thanks to airlines' yield management software. So each day the price is different. And also the pricing needed to be done for each pair of destination and departure city. So over 800 different creatives every day with new pricing were created on an automated basis every day, and then pushed into execution. And execution was, retargeting across the internet, personalized based on the specific destination city that a visitor had looked at. Again, if I was looking at a flight to London, I would get a video that showed video of London. Here's what this looked like. These aren't the actual ones. These were videos, again, 15-second videos, not images, but I think you can get a sense of it. So again, let's say that I'm an Amsterdam resident. I had searched for London. I would get on the internet, I would get a video showing all those cool reasons why I might want to go to London. And I would also get the exact price of that day so I could know exactly, and then hopefully book now. So again, it's hard to imagine producing over 800 personalized videos every night without some level of automation like this. So I hope that these case studies of some brands using Bynder tools to bring a level of automation to their creative function, I hope that shows how not only does it let the creative team meet these big demands for volume and for agility, but in a way that really allows them to do what they do best, which is be creative, to not short circuit that great branding and storytelling, and really to have a win-win across the marketing organization. We'd love to talk to you more about this. We've got a spot in the exhibition, the virtual exhibition hall. So please feel free to join us. And I thank you for your time.